Hello. This recording is going to be on Chapter 3 about computer science and how it relates to the foundation of knowledge model, and also Chapter 4, which is our introduction to cognitive science. So let's begin with computer science. Just what is computer science? And how can it facilitate the acquisition of data? And how can this benefit nursing? Computer science is all about the hardware and the software that we use every day between our computers, games, our iPads, and then in our job when it comes to the learning management system for education or testing platforms, as well as things like Epic and the Omnicell when we are practicing in the clinical area. But what we want to know is how does it facilitate the acquisition of data? And then how does this facilitate and benefit nursing? Let's talk about that a bit. So the computer is nothing but a tool. It's got inputs and outputs. It helps us to manage information and helps us to generate information. So computer science has been ushered in its called because we're now in the information age. We know that there is more knowledge and more information available than sometimes we can even handle. And how do we manipulate that and use it for the benefit of our patients and for our students? Computer is nothing more than an information processing machine that serves as a tool to manage data and help us create knowledge. Um, the easiest way to understand computers is to look at it as this input and output type of situation. These are unique machines as far as our systems and our computers. They accept data and they accept it in many different ways. They accept it from a computer mouse when we generate it, from the keyboard, also from video, from things like when x-rays are sent into the computer. They do all kinds of arithmetic type renderings and they store data. Input devices, like I talked about, are also all the things like MP3 players and joysticks and the things we use for games. Um, Now, there's also specific software. Software are things that depends on the application and the data. One key hardware component is the monitor. Now, the monitor is really the most unique part of the computer. It is how we, the end users, interface back and forth with this information that we have in our systems. We can visualize it, we can manipulate it, many different things. So it's very critical that how the monitor is set up, how the monitor is displayed, how the information is displayed on the monitor, all impacts and affects how we can interact and how we can learn. You all know from the different systems that you've used, some that are easier to to look at or to manipulate and others that aren't. So we think of the computer as an input-output tool, the different things that are the input, which are the keyboards and the joysticks, as well as throughput and processing, which is our software and our monitors. Now, what's the relationship of computer science to knowledge? We're really just beginning to understand that. I don't know how many of you took notes on computers or take notes on computers now or still use pen and paper. There's a connection between the hand and the brain when we write. So is there that same connection between when we type as when we write? That's what people are just beginning to start to understand. Um, but we are able, there's a lot of contribution from us as the users. That's why nurses need to be involved when computer systems are developed for the practice area and when we get new software and different programs in the educational area too, like what kind of things we use for testing, because the end users are the ones who have to input the data and then use it to help learners generate knowledge or to disseminate knowledge when it comes to patients. We also know that the World Wide Web is a huge composite of different information. We know some of it is very good, and we know some of it isn't very good at all. And how do we discern and help our students and our patients discern the difference between what is accurate and usable and what isn't? So, kind of in summary, it's a very fast growing discipline. There are many, many different areas to get into computer science. It's really astonishing the things, if you think about the different things our computers can do, the different things that we can do with sending different images, x-ray images over computer lines or over the internet to physicians to read. It's very productive and it is very much the future of our nursing practice. Computers and programs and devices are going to be a part of how we do nursing from here on out. So how we embrace it, how we understand it, how we teach it to our students and how we help them understand how to use it is very important. Um, so that, let's go back a slide. Really, that is the most important parts about computer science. Now, there's a lot more information in your text, and I really recommend that you read a lot of the things about the computers to understand all about inputs and outputs, and so that you thoroughly understand not only computer systems, but it will help you better understand the different kinds of systems that you use in your practice. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is Introduction to Cognitive Science. Cognitive science is about how we learn, how our students learn, and then how we go about processing that information. It's really a very interdisciplinary field because it studies the mind, your intelligence, and your behavior from an information processing standpoint. So if you think about it, in the last slides we talked about computers as information processing. Well, our brains are information processing. So that's what grew out to be what computers are doing. It provides scaffolding for the analysis and modeling of complicated, multifaceted human performance. So it has a really big effect on informatics because understanding how we process the information is the only way that those who are going to make systems that we work with make them work to be something usable for us to generate knowledge. It can enhance our performance or it cannot, and it can make our work easier or harder depending on how the systems are developed, how the information processing part, and how that interfaces with our brains. You know that people learn in all different ways. So how do we make systems that everybody can use with all different kinds of learning styles and preference of ways they learn? Now let's talk a minute about connectivism. That's a component of cognitive science that uses computer modeling through artificial neural networks to try to explain human intellectual abilities. So most of you know that there's always been an interest in how the brain works, how we can copy or model those behaviors and those thought processes in our computer systems. So we're going to talk about some different components. So neural networks, those are interconnected simple processing devices of models of our brain and our nervous system that people have developed. There's a lot of different elements that are linked together and that try to replicate the synapses in the ways that we think. So we could model the whole nervous system by doing input where it receives information, and then the hidden units where all the thinking and processing goes on. Um, that's sensory, that's in between the input and the output, and then the output units where the outcomes or results of the processings are found. That's one of the hardest things. We can watch our students input the information that we give them, how we present the content, what kind of things we give them, and then we see their output. We see their output by the assignments that they do, their performance on exams, and how they perform in the clinical unit. But what goes on in between there, that's what is we need to study. And that's what artificial intelligence and neural networks all have to do with, is trying to figure out how we learn. There are many, many textbooks on learning theory that describe and discuss working memory, long-term memory, how do students, how do they remember what we're teaching them? And when you get into curriculum development and design, we're going to talk a lot more about that. Also, epistemology, that's really the nature and origin of knowledge, what it means to know. How do we know what we know? And how did we get that? Then the artificial intelligence, that's the field that deals with conception, development, and implementation of these informatics tools. It attempts to capture these complex processes of the human thought and intelligence, how we process. But what's the point? All right, so we know all of that. What's the point? The whole point is that collecting and building data, information, and knowledge to be able to make informed, judicious, prudent, and intelligent decisions. That's what we have to do as a nurse. That's what we have to teach our students as we're in the class. It's what we teach new students when we precept them. And really, it's what we teach patients when we want them to understand the teaching that we give them about their disease or their medications or how to care for themselves when they get home. So it's very important. It's a decision-making process that evolves around knowledge and wisdom. Cognitive science and cognitive informatics and artificial intelligence will continue to evolve and help us to build knowledge and wisdom. So let's talk about this decision making a little bit. What is this? Well, decision making is just the process that revolves around knowledge and wisdom. If you think about it, think about knowledge. It's the awareness and understanding of a set of information and ways that information can be used to support a specific task or arrive at a decision. It abounds with others' thoughts and information, or it's information that's synthesized. All right, so that's what we do every day. We make decisions and we use our knowledge that we already have to make those decisions. We know that there are different levels of decision making and that some people are very good at it and some people aren't. But also, along with knowledge, there's wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge that's applied in a practical way. Um, you use knowledge and experience to heighten your common sense and insight to exercise sound judgment and practical manners. How many people have you worked with that have a lot of knowledge, but they can't seem to, they only can put it together in the textbook way? They can't look at the specific patient situation or personal situation and make some sound judgments and be practical. Um, Sometimes, really, wisdom is thought about as the highest form of common sense that results from all the accumulation of knowledge and experience that you already have. So, how do we also help students and new nurses gain more wisdom quicker? We know that the practice area is much more complex. We know that they have to become acclimated and ready to practice much sooner. And we also know that they don't stay in the practice area for a very long period of time, that they change positions and places very often. So we don't have 5 years to get them up to speed and know everything. We have to get them making the best decisions for the patients in a much quicker time. That has to do with the knowledge that they gain and then how we impart wisdom or help them to gain wisdom in different patient situations. How to focus on their own minds. Just like what you're doing when you're watching people in the practice area and you're watching them gather information, you're watching how they generate it, how they process it, how they disseminate it. All of those things help us to develop, to make decisions, gain knowledge, and then apply wisdom in those situations. So if you understand more about how people are doing that, you'll be much better at helping students, patients, and people, other nurses that you work with, make better decisions and then have better patient outcomes. So I want to finish up here to summarize. I want to talk a bit about cognitive informatics. This emerging field is helping us to study those gaps in how information is processed in the mind, how it is used with computers, and how it's used to generate the knowledge that we need. So we must use our wisdom, make informed, judicious, and prudent, intelligent decisions, and use all of the different processes and all of the different elements of the knowledge model to help us take care of patients, to help us teach students, and to help us teach patients. We're going to talk a little bit more of this as in our discussion when you're doing your discussion about what you've seen in the practice area.